Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going over all the Final Fantasy spoilers that were spoiled over the last couple days. New combos, new synergies, a bunch of infinite combos to talk about actually. So let's jump right into it with our first card, Go-Go, Master of Mimicry, which is 3 mana for a legendary wizard, and it's 2/4 stats. You can tap 2X and tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability you control X times, and you can choose new targets for the copies, and the ability can't be copied and X can't be 0. So essentially, this lets you copy activated and triggered abilities multiple times, which is pretty powerful. The stats are pretty good too. It's a 2/4, so it doesn't die to things that do 3 damage or cut down. So it has some sort of resiliency. It could block potentially okay. But really, we're using this for this ability to copy things. And two cards that kind of came to mind when I first thought about this were Jace the Perfected Mind, because it's got a bunch of activated abilities. For any Planeswalker, you can copy the activated abilities, which is pretty powerful. But for Jace, you could copy, say, the +1 to kind of, and again, you can copy multiple times. So you could give like 3 of your opponent's creatures less power, which could be pretty good to protect yourself and protect the Jace, and also up the loyalty here for when you're using the final here, which is to mill X times 3. So if you have cast it for 4, comes into play with 5, and then this is essentially 15 cards. If you multiplied that by twice, if you paid 4 mana to copy it twice, that'd be 45 cards, which is pretty good and may just end the game right there if you mill your opponent for 45. So that's pretty powerful. Also, the Filigree Silex is pretty nice. 2 mana for an artifact that puts oil counters on it. Again, you could copy this ability to put oil counters on it to put more oil counters on it. But really, the -10 here of removing 10 oil decanters, it deals 10 damage to any target. If you copied that, 2 times, probably just 1 time, that's 20 to 30 damage. So that could be some potential 2-card combos that kind of end the game with Go-Go right away. Um, there's some infinite combo potential with Go-Go too. I just made a video on my channel for this one in particular, but there's a few infinite combos with the Enigma Jewel, which taps for 2 mana. So essentially, this 2 mana can be used to pay the cost here. And the Unstoppable Plan, which says at the beginning of your end step, you untap all non-land permanents you control. Basically, with this ability on the stack, you can copy it with Go-Go and use the Enigma Jewel to pay for the cost, and that will then untap the Go-Go and the Enigma Jewel, and then you can copy the ability again. It will untap them. You can copy it again and just go infinite. You get infinite of this ability to untap all the non-land permanents you control. So if you have something like the Kindle Spark Duo in play, which taps to do 1 damage to an opponent, then you can basically end the game right there, do infinite damage. If you have any other mana ability in play, um, such as like a Land Elves or something like that, you can get infinite mana. It is during your end step. So um, there's quite a few ways that this could just be an infinite game-winning combo, and you could do it as early as turn 4 if you had Enigma Jewel on turn 1, this on turn 3, and then Unstoppable Plan on turn 4. You can kind of go off there, but um, yeah, let me know in the comments below if you think this one is decent. Again, I just made a video explaining this one in more detail on my channel. And then there's also another 3-card combo that gives you infinite combat steps with Go-Go, which is Omen Hawker and Aurelia. Again, Omen Hawker, with this last combo, you could use it in addition to Go-Go to generate more mana. But it adds 2 mana for activated abilities. Again, just kind of a perfect match for Go-Go's effect here. And then Aurelia says, whenever you attack when it attacks for the first time, untap all creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat step. So if you had Omen Hawker, Go-Go, and then you play Aurelia, the ability goes on the stack when it attacks, and then you just copy it. It untaps all of these creatures, and then you copy it again. It untaps, copy it again. It untaps, copy it again. So you get infinite combat steps, which, depending if your opponent has a bunch of blockers or not, will potentially end the game. Aurelia itself would kill them if they don't have enough sort of flying blockers back. So that could be an interesting 3-card combo that ends the game. Go-Go's a really powerful card, I think. Got a lot of potential to be powerful. Any other cool combos? I'm sure there's tons more that I haven't even thought of for Go-Go. Let me know in the comments below. But seems like a pretty cool card and just kind of one to brew around and think about some combos for. All right, let's move on to uh, Robon, I believe. 2 mana for a 2/2, and it has ward pay life equal to its power. It's a legend, a human warrior. And when it attacks, attach up to one target equipment you control to target attacking creature. Um, it's pretty powerful effect here to be able to attach things for free, and it is a creature itself, which is nice because you can attach the equipment to it. In standard, there's nothing like super busted, so to speak, besides maybe the Buster Sword is pretty good. But there's nothing like super good that has both a cheap cost and a high equip cost. But the cards that I thought about with this card that could be good is the Buster Sword, 3 mana, and equip is 2, but it just curves really nicely here. This on turn 2, Buster Sword on turn 3, attack, equip it here, and then if you hit your opponent, then you draw a card, and then you could cast like a 5-drop from your hand for free on turn 3. That's pretty powerful right there. And then it's really nice that when you boost its power, then the ward becomes even more powerful because makes it less likely they can kill it, or if they do have to kill it, they take even more damage. So that's pretty good. Things like Chainsaw could be nice. Just kill your opponent, put counters on it, and then equip that for free. Leylon Axe is actually pretty decent here too, because the equip cost is 3, but if you just get into play for 0, if it's in your opening hand, and then you can equip it for free, it's pretty nice. Attacks for 6, gives it trample. If you then the next turn put like a Buster Sword on it, then you could do a ton of damage and kind of go off, put a bunch of cards into play for free, things like that. So I think this card's quite good, to be honest. If there's an equipment deck, could definitely see play in it. In standard, and I think even in older formats, it's got even more potential here. Mostly because of Colossus Hammer. If you're not familiar with this card, it's 1 mana, +10/+10, loses flying, but the equip cost is 8, right? And this is cheating the equip cost. So essentially, it's like giving you 8 mana when it attacks, which is very powerful. You can even do this in historic and modern with the Arena of Glory. On turn 2, if you played Colossus Hammer on turn 1, turn 2, use the Arena of Glory's Exert ability to add double red, and then if it's spent on a creature, it gains haste. So you can put this into play with haste and attack right away, equip the hammer to it, and then it's a 12/12 that attacks. And then also, if they are trying to kill it, they have to pay 12 life. So that seems pretty powerful to me. Even in formats like Pioneer, we also have Cloud in Standard, but you could use Cloud to search up the Colossus Hammer, which is kind of a nice curve here if you go Radabon on 2 and then Cloud on 3, search up the hammer, play the hammer, attack as a 12/12 on turn 3, and then you have a Cloud in play. So some redundancy here. I think Cloud is pretty nice, so maybe there's sort of a Hammer Time deck that could form in Pioneer that's pretty decent, and this I think would be a big part of why it's good. So yeah, this card seems pretty sweet to me. In standard and older formats, pretty powerful effect. And again, it really depends on the equipment that we get. Maybe we'll get some more good equipment in standard. There's also already some decent ones, but I think this card definitely has some potential. All right, let's move on to Ninja Blades. Speaking of equipment, and actually is an equipment you could play with the card we just talked about, which could be okay, but it's 3 mana for an equipment job select, so that means you get a 1/1 that comes into play attached to it, and then gets +1/+1. It's a ninja, and it says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. That player loses life equal to the discarded card's mana value, and equip is 2. So this effect is quite powerful. To be able to draw and discard is nice, +1/+1 is nice, but to have them lose life equal to the mana value, that can do a lot of damage potentially. Now the problem with this card is that it only gives you a 2/2 essentially, the 1/1 plus the 1/1. You can't equip it to other cards that maybe have evasion, like Cryptic Code. I was thinking could be nice because it also is an equipment, and it makes the creature unblockable basically. So that could be a nice kind of combination. Equip this to this, and then just get in, do a bunch of damage, discard, do a bunch of damage. Um, enter the Enigma, kind of a cheap way. There's a lot of ways to kind of make your creatures unblockable. If you just want to use this creature, the creature that it gives you on the following turn to attack, something like Skrelv would be nice in this kind of deck too, because it could protect the 1/1 or sorry, the 2/2 here from dying right away, and could also potentially give it evasion. Skrelv says choose a color, another target creature you control gains toxic and hexproof from the color, and it can't be blocked by creatures with the color. So Skrelv is a nice one, I think, with this when you're trying to get in and protect the creature. Delny also kind of cool here because it gives you again a 2/2 here, so it would trigger the ability twice. You could maybe just kill your opponent with this ability, and also it gives it some evasion. They can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So could be some kind of combo there. I don't know. We'll see. And like, what are you discarding? Well, it's kind of interesting that there are quite a few cards in Standard that cost a lot. I think Galta is the highest casting cost, which is playable essentially on its own. If you're just playing a bunch of creatures, you could hard cast the Galta. But if you draw and discard Galta is 12 damage plus the 2 you're already doing to your opponent. That's 14 damage, which is pretty nice, right? If you have any other pump spells or any other attackers, you could just end the game with a Galta Funeral Room. So you add the costs of both of these. So this is 8 plus 3, which is 11 damage, and you could just play Funeral Room if you draw it. We got prototype creatures, which have a high casting cost, but you can prototype them for free. Restricted Office Lecture Hall I thought was kind of cute because this destroys all creatures of power 3 or greater, and this has power 2, so you could maybe even cast this to on turn 4 to destroy some of your opponent's creatures and attack in with the Ninja Blades. And again, you can equip it to other creatures you control too with flying or evasion to get in. So I actually think this card is pretty cool. It's pretty sweet. I don't know if it's quite there for Standard. We'll see. The ability is very powerful. And I don't know. I will definitely try to build around it. And it is an equipment, like you can search it up with Cloud, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, definitely a cool, interesting card, and something to I think brew around for sure, or something I will brew around at least on this channel. All right, let's move on to Hope Athesium. Is that how I pronounce it? Not 100% sure. I always mess up the pronunciations for these cards. This is 2 mana, white and a blue, multicolored legendary human wizard with lifelink. It's a 2/2. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent mills X cards, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. So an interesting effect. I don't think we've ever seen that effect before in a card, as long as I can remember. But definitely an interesting effect. A 2/2 lifelink, for 2 is okay. It's not completely unplayable. But how would you want to really use this effect? Well, maybe in a mill deck, it could be decent. I mean, if you use this attack for 2 each turn, it would mill them for 2. It's not bad. But probably want to maybe lean more into the life gain effect here. Maybe Union of the Third Path, you can gain a bunch of life if you have a bunch of cards in your hand, or in a life gain deck like Alenda, things that really want you to gain life. Um, Alenda can get up into a 10/10 lifelinker, so if you just play a bunch of lifelink creatures, maybe this is kind of sweet. It's cute with Raise the Pass too. There's a bunch of like life gain triggers that maybe could be useful. I mean, you do have to essentially gain, um, you know, 40 to 50 life, depending on your opponent, how much cards are left in their library. So it is quite an ask to be able to mill your opponent out, but could be possible potentially with this. So in combination with life gain and mill, maybe this card can get there. Certainly an interesting card to think about, and something I'll be trying to brew around as well. All right, let's go on to the cargo ship, which is a 2 mana 2/3 here. It's a vehicle, flying and vigilance, crew 1, but most importantly, it has this tap ability to add a colorless mana, and you can only use it to cast artifact spells or activate an ability of artifact source. Now, on the surface level, it doesn't seem that powerful, but 2 mana mana rock is actually decent in Standard. We don't have too many of those. So being able to kind of, if you're obviously you have to be in a artifact deck to make this useful, but it is itself an artifact and taps to add mana for artifacts on turn 2. It doesn't die to removal because it's a vehicle, to creature removal, anyways. So that's kind of cool. It can ramp you up to, say, like the Machinist Arsenal. Could be nice in maybe a synthesizer deck, or anything that cares about having a bunch of artifacts. You could use the tokens to crew it if you need to get in some damage in the air. Could be cute in like Radiant Lotus combo. I tried to make that work. Uh, you can check out the videos for some of my Radiant Lotus brews on the channel if you're interested. Um, but it could be decent there because it is an artifact and also helps you ramp up to Radiant Lotus, so that's pretty good. Yeah, seems decent. I mean, mostly using it for the mana ability, but the fact that you can crew it and get in some damage, or maybe as a blocker in the air, could be useful as well. So, just something to consider when you're building like an artifact or affinity deck. Um, this card is available. All right, let's move on to some lands here. Clive's Hideaway. This is a town here, and it has Hideaway 4, which means when it enters, you look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile one of them face down, and then put the rest on the bottom in a random order. It taps for colorless, and then 2 mana and tap. So essentially, like tapping 3 lands. You play the exile card without paying its mana cost if you control 4 or more legendary creatures. Well, that's kind of a big ask, I would say. There are quite a few cheap legendary creatures in the set and in standard you could play. I feel like the problem with that plan is that, well, then you most likely hit a bunch like 1 and 2 drop legendary creatures. It isn't that great to cast for free. You know, you could kind of go bigger, and the opportunity cost of this land isn't too high. Although legendary creatures tend to be kind of multicolored, so it might be like kind of too much of a downside to have a colorless land in that deck. The way that I looked at this card is actually, can we use this Hideaway ability in other ways? Because it is an untapped land that adds colorless, but it also just exiles something from your library, um, and just ignoring this last ability. So there are a few cards in standard that actually care about that. The first one I thought about was Slime Against Humanity, which says you put +1/+1 counters where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile, um, and in your graveyard that are oozes or Slime Against Humanity. So this would almost guarantee you hit a Slime Against Humanity. It would pump up all your future Slime Against Humanities, basically for the cost of a land drop, which is good if you're playing some janky Slime Against Humanity deck, which I probably will try on this channel. So why not? Ashiok, its last ability here counts it says target player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the total mana value of cards you own in exile. So that could contribute to Ashiok winning the game with its ultimate here, potentially. And then Ketchumos also cares about it wants you to have 7 cards in exile, and this could be an additional one. So, and it is a legendary creature itself, so it kind of adds to this here if you kind of some cross synergy. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting card. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Again, the opportunity cost is pretty low. Just having a colorless land does come into play untapped. My big worry is that colorless might not work, but I think at least this would be pretty good in a Slime Against Humanity deck. All right, let's go to the last land here, Balam Garden, which is a town. It comes into play tapped, and you can add green or blue, and then 7 mana to transform it, and it costs 1 less to activate for each other town you control. So each other town, it doesn't count itself, but you could activate this, fairly soon in the game if you have a bunch of towns that you're playing. It flips over into a vehicle which is a 4/5 flying, and when it attacks, you draw a card and has crew for 1. So which is interesting. It's a vehicle land kind of. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. It notably can't attack on its own. You do need another creature in play for it to attack, but it is pretty powerful. A 5/4 flyer that draws a card when it attacks is pretty good. Um, and again, the opportunity cost kind of low here. A dual land that comes to play tapped is, playable uh, in standard if you need the fixing. And being a town itself, it's not legendary or anything. The town itself, so multiple of these could tap to contribute to flipping it. This vehicle is legendary, so you couldn't have 2 of those in play. But this card's interesting. I feel like Reach the Horizons is pretty nice with this. This is 4 mana for sorcery. Search your library for 2 basics or town cards with different names. Put them into the battlefield. So one of the cards you could is search is this land itself because it's a town, and then get another land that's a town, which would reduce the cost here. So maybe there's sort of some town ramp deck, and this is kind of just a nice mana sink in it. Nice with Town Greeter here too. It mills 4, and then you can put a land card from among them into your hand. If it's a town card, you gain 2 life. So if you flip this over, you can gain 2 life and find it. And then it's also the 1/1, so it can crew the vehicle here. So there's some interesting synergies here. Again, lands, the opportunity costs are not too high. So maybe this would see some play in a town deck or just a ramp deck with these cards as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about this one. So that is it for today for what we got with spoilers. Let me know in the comments below any other cool thoughts or combos you got going with Final Fantasy. Are you enjoying the set? Any brews that you're coming up with? I got a bunch that I'm working on at the moment, and excited to share when the set drops on Arena. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.